I have zero idea how to code, but over the last few months, I've built an AI system that handles pretty much all of our marketing stuff. Things such as competitor research, content strategy, SEO audits, blog creation, all entirely through Claude Code. It's essentially like my AI CMO, which is now helping me run my 7-figure SaaS company, Triggery. So in this video, I'm going to show you the skills that I'm using, how I set up my repo, and how I'm using the new feature that Claude's recently brought out, which is their Discord feature, so I can chat with Claude Code while I'm on the go. So let's dive in. So first things first, you will need to, if you haven't already, create a repo, which is just a folder system essentially. And in that folder system, the first thing that you're going to want to do is create a thing called skills. Now, skills essentially is a step-by-step function that Claude Code will follow. In fact, and if you're using Codex or any other tools, they'll also follow this. They can use skills as well. Think of it like a mini automation that you are writing in written word, essentially. The best way to create a skill is first start by understanding what do you want reproduced. Is it things such as SEO audits? Is it blog creation? Is it social content creation? Is it competitor research? Whatever it is, think about what you want to do there. And then you want to think about, okay, how can I go ahead and get the best amount of knowledge on what good looks like? Because skills is essentially training an agent to say, hey, these are the step-by-step functions that I want you to follow, and this is what a good output should look like. And here's how you get there from A to B, essentially. So if you look at this one here that I have for blog writing, you can see here it's got step-by-step instructions. So first of all, it needs to read a brief from my blog's brief file. Then it's going to load the Triggery context, which is the Triggery knowledge base. Then it's going to go ahead and write the articles. Here's the structure that it should follow. Here's the architecture that it should follow. What good looks like, what bad looks like, so on and so on, basically, until it then goes ahead and creates, we're using linear. So it creates the linear issue, which is the blog, uploads that into there, and then updates the status tracking of that as well. And you can see then here I have another skill associated to blog statuses, things like that. Another really good quick example here to show you is social content. So this is, again, how does it write great newsletters, great LinkedIn posts, great Twitter posts or X posts, right? Whatever you want to call it. And this one's a big one. And again, it's what does good look like? What do the algorithms look for? How can we analyze a good hook? So on and so on. So an example would be is if I was to fire up Claude here, I could ask it something such as what makes a good LinkedIn post? And you're going to see automatically, this is going to go ahead and use that skill. There we go, because we've basically created a bunch of hook words, which is then going to say, okay, I've found the skill that that's associated to. I'm going to read it. And here's what makes a good LinkedIn post, essentially. So that is skills. Now, how do you go ahead and create them? Well, maybe you are an expert. You have the domain knowledge in a certain area. So maybe it's just pouring your brain out into Claude. The best thing for you to do is use Claude's plan mode. So do /plan. And then you want to say, help me create a skill on, and then you would enter in what you want it to be. I want you to interview me to help really make this watertight, right? Something along those lines. You want to make sure that it's interviewing you to really pull that knowledge out. Now, maybe you might have domain expertise, but maybe you're like, yeah, I could still probably do with a little bit more. Well, here's then where you could tell it to go ahead and research. Go ahead and search the internet or wherever it is to also top up potential gaps, and then come back and suggest things to you, and again, interview you based on the research that it's done. So that leads me to the next one, which is how does it do that research? How does it scrape data? How does it pull information? How does it find information? And all of that. How do we connect it to things? So we're going to ask here what tools. In fact, I'm just going to close this down here. I'm going to reload it, get out of plan mode. What tools do I have connected? You would have heard of CPs at this point. You would have heard of APIs, and you're now starting to probably hear about CLIs. Now, why are people going from MPC to CLI? Well, the main thing is that an MPC basically gives all of this context on how to use an API. It's almost like a USB on, like, this is how to basically interact with the API. The challenge with it is it can overwhelm AIs because it injects tons of context in there, which isn't really needed anymore. And therefore, the context window, the size, which is not actually showing me here for some reason, but the context of how big that session, which is typically 200 tokens. Here we're using the Opus model, so it's 1 million tokens, so it's quite a lot. It will eat into that, and you don't want that. And so that's why CLIs are a lot more popular, which is, again, more of a friendlier way for an AI to interact with external APIs. So you can see here, I've got things such as Triggery set up, which is social listening and social management, basically. HeyReach, Clay, LinkedIn, we got Linear, we got Notion, Discord, Gmail, Featurebase, Fireflies. Firecrawl is the one that I use for all of our web scraping, crawling, search-based, browser MCP, and then Claude and Chrome. We've recently just switched across to Claude and Chrome, which essentially is the ability for Claude to actually control your Chrome browser. Whereas before, we were using things such as Browserbase, which uses Playwright. For those who aren't that technical, basically means it was creating a test environment. Now, Claude can actually have access to your browser. So things that you're logged into, your sessions, your cookies, all of that, which makes it extremely seamless experience for it controlling things. For example, if you're part of any networks or any groups, you could have a task set up where it goes ahead and kind of reads everything in there and then updates its own knowledge base. Which takes me on to the next key and critical part to this whole thing is tasks. How do we run them? What are they? Well, you probably heard a lot of people talk about things such as cron jobs. Cron jobs are basically the techie world's version of something like NA10 as an example. It's basically, again, just a step-by-step function on how to execute a script or a series of events. So for example, a cron might be every day, go ahead and query this API and give me a summary of whatever you wanted to give you a summary on, for example. And you can set up local cron jobs, which basically means you need no tools for this, but if your laptop is on, you can say, Claude, set me up a cron to go and check my Gmail or my calendar for the day, and then give me a summary, send like a message to Slack as like a summary of what I've got on for the day, for example. The downside to that is you have to have your computer on always. So then Claude recently added a new kind of schedule, which you can see here. If I do / schedule, which gives you the ability to create, update, list, or run schedule or remote agents that execute via a cron schedule. So this basically takes it into the cloud, which means it doesn't matter if your computer is on or not, which is awesome. Or you can get a little bit more technical and use tools like trigger.dev or ingest, which gives you even more finite control, but I won't go into that. That's a video for another day. So how is my kind of repo, which is my folder system, essentially set up? Well, we have all the skills, which I've shown you there. Then inside of here, we have different folders. For example, we have a blog automation and a cron that runs where we are initially doing an SEO audit. So the SEO audit basically is using an SEO skill that we've created, which once a month basically goes ahead and runs research based on the performance of our website page. So it uses RFs and then basically says, okay, hey, this is everything that is going on. Here is some recommended content calendar. Here is the pillars that you should focus on. And then here are the clusters that you should focus on, guidelines for that, so on and so on. So then what happens is when the agent fires up to write a blog, it checks the blog. First of all, it checks what clusters have we done? What briefs do we have? And then it kind of works its way through this report every single day. And now we're writing 5-6 blogs a week purely because of this step-by-step function, which, this type of report would cost thousands for anyone to produce for us. And then on top of that, all of the blog writing, which is totally SEO optimized and AI optimized as well. Then we have things such as like daily insights. So here, basically, I have like a folder system set up, which is giving me analysis on how is my business doing, MRR, ARR, churn, what's going on, and things like feature base, which is where, like an intercom system, things like that. Then we have our knowledge folder. So inside of our knowledge folder, we have what is Triggery. So how did I create this knowledge folder initially? First, I hooked up Fireflies, which is our call recording system, and I told it to go and listen to the last 100 calls that we did and create an analysis of what Triggery is based on those sales calls that we had done. Then I told it to go to our website, ingest all of that. Then I told it to go to our help desk or our help center, ingest all of that information, and then it created its knowledge repository off the back of all of that data. And again, you guessed it correctly. We've created a cron setup that basically kind of refreshes that, right? Because the company is forever evolving. But then we also have this competitor one set up. So this is a recent one where we're using Triggery that's monitoring our competitors such as Brandwatch. And then we're doing all of this stuff. We're having a summary, how they position themselves, how other people kind of position them. And so that we have this knowledge repository on these competitors as well, so that we can kind of tap into this folder system, this MD file essentially, whenever we want that to happen as well. And there's so much more here, right? But like, there's not enough time to go into everything. So this leads me on to my last part, which is maybe we're not that friendly with terminals. So the question is, how do we chat to it through Discord? Well, this is where things such as plugins come into handy. So here you can install, for example, Slack, or you can install Discord, which you can see is connected. So if I then share my Discord screen here, you'll then see that I can now go ahead and tag and speak to Claude from here. Say hello to everyone. I'm running a demo. And so you create basically a bot inside of Discord. You connect it to the plugin that you've done, and here you are. You can then see. So my one is called Jinx. For those of you who have watched Arcane on Netflix, League of Legends, that is me. So we've got loads, as you can see here. We've got loads of different, we've got Bella, Jinx, Rex. We also have Taz, Rock. We've got different agents doing different specializations, different skills. This is a video for another day because this is a mixture of OpenClaw and Claude Code. But this is how I'm communicating on the go with my repo, which is my marketing repo. So now I can chat to it, say, hey, let's go write a blog on this. Hey, can you use the Triggery API and let me know if anyone's talked about XYZ? Can you help turn this transcript into a LinkedIn post, into an X post, and then go ahead and post that for me? And it acts as my command center, and I can chat to it whether I'm on the go or just in a simpler way on the laptop itself. So if you want to start building something like this yourself, the first thing you need is a solid feed of market intelligence coming into the system, which is something I think I've spoken a lot about, which is that context. That's what keeps everything grounded and what's actually happening in your market right now, not what was happening 6 months ago. That's essentially what the tool I built, Triggery, handles. It monitors signals across LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, GitHub, YouTube, podcasts, and so much more, surfacing what matters to your agents and then routes it to wherever you need it to go. So try it for free. It's the first link in the description. And if you want a complete guide on social listening for B2B marketing, check out this video next.